Let me describe someone to you and tell me if this sounds familiar. They're 64 years old, 1 year away from retirement. They've done everything right. They started investing in their 30s, they maxed out their 401k when they could, they lived below their means, they saved aggressively. And after 30 years of disciplined investing, they've accumulated $1.2 million in their retirement accounts. They should be celebrating. They should be sleeping well at night. They should be planning their retirement party with confidence. Instead, they're terrified because they just met with their financial advisor and the advisor showed them the 4% rule. You can safely withdraw 4% of your portfolio in the first year of retirement, then adjust that amount for inflation each year, and your money should last 30 years. 4% of $1.2 million is $48,000 per year. After taxes, that's maybe $38,000. Add Social Security of about $24,000 per year, and they're looking at living on $62,000 per year in retirement. They currently make $95,000 per year, and they're barely comfortable at that income. The thought of dropping to $62,000 is terrifying. Their property taxes alone are $8,000 per year. Their health care before Medicare kicks in will be $18,000 per year. That's $26,000 gone right there, leaving $36,000 for everything else: food, utilities, car maintenance, home repairs, travel, entertainment, unexpected expenses, everything for the rest of their life. And the advisor is sitting there calmly saying, the 4% rule is safe. It's based on historical data. You'll be fine. But they don't feel fine. They feel like they saved for 30 years, accumulated more money than they ever thought possible, and somehow it's not enough. They're wondering if they can even afford to retire. They're thinking about working another 5 years, maybe 10, just to build the cushion they thought they already had. And the worst part, they followed the rules. They did exactly what every financial expert told them to do. Save 15% of your income, max out your 401k, invest in index funds, follow the 4% rule. And now they're sitting in an advisor's office realizing that the 4% rule was designed for a world that doesn't exist anymore. If you're planning for retirement based on the 4% withdrawal rule, if you've calculated your retirement number by dividing your desired income by 0.04, if you think you're safe because financial advisors have been preaching this rule for decades, this video is going to change everything you think you know about retirement planning. My name is John, and I've spent years studying retirement withdrawal strategies, and I need to tell you something that the financial industry doesn't want you to know. The 4% rule is broken. It was always questionable, but in today's economic environment, it's downright dangerous. And if you follow it blindly, there's a very real chance you'll run out of money before you run out of life. If this is making you uncomfortable, good. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up, because what I'm about to explain could save your retirement. Here's the thing most people don't understand about the 4% rule. It's not a law of nature. It's not based on mathematical certainty. It's based on one study done in 1994 by a financial advisor named Bill Bengen, analyzing historical market returns from 1926 to 1976. That's it. One study, one data set, one 50-year period. And that study concluded that a retiree could withdraw 4% of their portfolio in year one, adjust for inflation each year, and have a 95% chance of not running out of money over 30 years. Notice what I said, 95% chance, not 100%. Even in the historical data that the rule is based on, there was a 5% failure rate. 1 in 20 retirees following this rule would have gone broke. But financial advisors took that study and turned 4% into gospel. It's safe, it's conservative, it's been tested. Except it hasn't been tested in the world we live in today. Let me show you why the 4% rule is broken and why following it today is significantly more dangerous than it was when Bengen published his study. Reason number 1 the 4% rule is broken: historically low interest rates and bond returns. When Bengen did his study, the average 10-year Treasury yield from 1926 to 1976 was about 4.5%. Today, even after recent increases, the 10-year Treasury yield's around 4.5%, but we just spent over a decade near zero. The traditional 60-40 portfolio, 60% stocks and 40% bonds, relied on bonds providing stable returns of 4 to 6% annually. That was the safety net. When stocks crashed, bonds held steady and provided income. But from 2008 to 2021, bonds were yielding almost nothing. The 10-year Treasury went below 1% at one point. If you retired in 2020 with a traditional 60-40 portfolio and started withdrawing 4%, your bond allocation was earning basically zero while you were pulling out 4%. You were depleting your principal immediately. The math doesn't work when your safe assets aren't generating returns. Updated studies using modern bond yields show that the safe withdrawal rate is closer to 3.3% to 3.5%, not 4%. That might not sound like a big difference, but let me show you what it means. If you have $1 million saved and you follow the 4% rule, you withdraw $40,000 in year 1. If the actual safe rate is 3.3%, you should only withdraw $33,000. You're over-withdrawing by $7,000 per year, or 21%. Over a 30-year retirement, that overspending dramatically increases your risk of running out of money. Multiple studies in the last decade, from Morningstar, Vanguard, and independent researchers, have all concluded the same thing. In the current interest rate environment, 4% is too aggressive. The safe withdrawal rate is somewhere between 3% and 3.5%. But it gets worse. Reason number 2 the 4% rule is broken: sequence of returns risk. This is the retirement killer that nobody talks about. The 4% rule assumes average returns over time, but averages don't matter. What matters is the order of your returns, especially in the first decade of retirement. Let me explain with 2 scenarios. Person A retires with $1 million. In their first 10 years of retirement, the market averages 8% returns. Then they experience a crash, and the next 10 years average 2%. Then the final 10 years average 6%. Their overall 30-year average is about 5.3%. They withdraw 4% adjusted for inflation. They end up with money left over. They're fine. Person B retires with the same $1 million. They get the exact same returns, just in reverse order. Their first 10 years average 2% returns because they retired right before a market downturn. Then they get 10 years of 6% returns, then 10 years of 8% returns. Same 30-year average of 5.3%. But person B runs out of money in year 24. They go broke 6 years before person A, despite having identical average returns. Why? Because when you're withdrawing money, the order of returns matters more than the average. If you experience poor returns early in retirement while you're withdrawing, you deplete your portfolio to a point where it can't recover even when good returns come later. This is called sequence of returns risk, and it's the biggest threat to the 4% rule. The original study didn't adequately account for this because it assumed you could just use historical averages. But real retirees don't get to choose when they retire relative to market cycles. If you happen to retire at the peak of the market right before a crash, like someone retiring in 2007 or 2000, you're screwed even if you follow the 4% rule perfectly. Recent analysis shows that retirees who retired in 2000, right before the dot-com crash, and followed the 4% rule came dangerously close to running out of money. Many had to drastically reduce their withdrawals or go back to work. Reason number 3 the 4% rule is broken: inflation volatility and real-world spending patterns. The 4% rule assumes you adjust your withdrawal for inflation every year. So if you start at $40,000 and inflation is 3%, next year you take $41,200, then $42,436, and so on. But this assumes 2 things that aren't true. First, it assumes inflation is stable and predictable. Second, it assumes your spending is consistent and only increases with inflation. Both assumptions are wrong. We just experienced the highest inflation in 40 years. From 2021 to 2023, inflation was running at 7 to 9% annually. If you were retired and following the 4% rule, adjusting your withdrawals for actual inflation, you increased your withdrawals by 7 to 9% multiple years in a row, while the market was flat or down. That's a death spiral for your portfolio. You're pulling out more money during the exact time your portfolio is shrinking. The math destroys you. But even in normal times, the inflation assumption is flawed because retiree spending doesn't follow general inflation. Healthcare costs inflate faster than general inflation, averaging 5 to 7% annually. If you're retired and spending $15,000 per year on healthcare at 65, by 85, that expense has grown to $40,000 per year if healthcare inflation runs at 6%. But the 4% rule is only adjusting your total withdrawal by general inflation of 2 to 3%. You can't afford your health care. Additionally, research shows that retiree spending isn't constant, it's front-loaded. People spend more in their 60s and early 70s when they're healthy and active. They travel, they renovate homes, they help kids and grandkids. Then, spending drops in their late 70s and 80s as they become less active. Then, it spikes again in their final years due to medical and long-term care costs. The 4% rule, with its constant inflation-adjusted withdrawal, doesn't match this reality. You're either underspending in your active years or overspending in your less active years, or you're broke when you need long-term care. None of these outcomes are good. The rule is too rigid for real life. Reason number 4, the 4% rule is broken. Longer life expectancy and earlier retirement. When Bengen did his study, he used a 30-year retirement horizon because that matched life expectancy for a 65-year-old retiree in the 1990s. But we're living longer now. A 65-year-old today has a decent chance of living to 90 or 95. That's a 25 to 30-year retirement if you retire at 65. But many people want to retire earlier. If you retire at 60, you might need your money to last 35 years. If you retire at 55, you need 40 years. The 4% rule wasn't designed for 40-year retirements. Studies analyzing longer retirement horizons show that the safe withdrawal rate drops significantly. For a 40-year retirement, the safe withdrawal rate is closer to 3% or even 2.8%. So if you retire early and follow the 4% rule, you're dramatically increasing your risk of running out of money. But nobody tells you this. Financial advisors keep parroting 4% like it's universal, regardless of your retirement age or life expectancy. It's not. The earlier you retire, the lower your safe withdrawal rate needs to be. So here's where we are. The 4% rule is broken because bond returns are lower than historical averages, sequence of returns risk is real and deadly, inflation is volatile and healthcare specific, and people are living longer and retiring earlier. Multiple updated studies from credible sources, Morningstar, Vanguard, Wade Pfau, Michael Kitces, all conclude the same thing. 4% is too high. The actual safe withdrawal rate in today's environment is somewhere between 2.8% and 3.5%, depending on your specific situation, asset allocation, and retirement timeline. But let's talk about what that actually means for your retirement planning, because the implications are devastating. If you've been told you need to save 25 times your annual expenses to retire, that's based on the 4% rule. If you need $60,000 per year in retirement, you've been told you need $1.5 million saved. That's $60,000 divided by 0.04. But if the safe withdrawal rate is actually 3%, you don't need $1.5 million. You need $2 million. That's $60,000 divided by 0.03. If the safe rate is 2.8%, you need $2.14 million. The 4% rule is causing people to undersave by 33% to 43%. Millions of Americans think they're on track for retirement because they're using the 4% rule, but they're actually hundreds of thousands of dollars short. Now you might be thinking, John, this is terrifying. I'm never going to be able to retire. I can't save $2 million. What am I supposed to do? And I hear you. The good news is that there are better strategies than the 4% rule. Strategies that are more flexible, more responsive to market conditions, and significantly safer. Let me walk you through what actually works. Strategy number 1, dynamic withdrawal strategies instead of fixed percentage. The biggest flaw in the 4% rule is that it's static. You withdraw the same inflation-adjusted amount regardless of market conditions. That's insane. When the market crashes and your portfolio drops 30%, why would you keep withdrawing the same amount? You're locking in losses. A better approach is dynamic withdrawal. You adjust your withdrawal based on portfolio performance. There are several methods. The Guardrails method. You set an upper and lower bound around your withdrawal rate. Let's say your target is 4%, but you set guardrails at 3% and 5%. If your portfolio performs well and your withdrawal rate drops below 3% because your portfolio grew faster than your spending, you increase your withdrawal and enjoy life more. If your portfolio performs poorly and your withdrawal rate creeps above 5% because your portfolio shrunk, you cut your spending by 10% to get back below the 5% guardrail. This method adjusts to market reality while preventing you from overspending in bad years or underspending in good years. The percentage of portfolio method. Instead of withdrawing a fixed dollar amount adjusted for inflation, you withdraw a fixed percentage of your current portfolio value each year. If you start with $1 million and use 4%, you withdraw $40,000 in year 1. If your portfolio grows to $1.1 million in year 2, you withdraw $44,000. If it drops to $900,000 in year 3, you withdraw $36,000. Your spending fluctuates with your portfolio, which is more sustainable. Studies show this method has a near zero failure rate because you can't run out of money if you're only spending a percentage of what's left. The downside is spending volatility. Your retirement income fluctuates year to year, but you can smooth this by using a moving average. Instead of basing your withdrawal on last year's portfolio value, base it on the average portfolio value over the last 3 to 5 years. This reduces volatility while maintaining sustainability. Strategy number 2, incorporate flexible spending and discretionary buckets. Not all retirement spending is fixed. Some expenses are essential: housing, food, healthcare, utilities. Others are discretionary: travel, hobbies, gifts, entertainment. A smarter approach is to separate your spending into essential and discretionary buckets. Cover your essential expenses with guaranteed income sources, Social Security, pensions, annuities. Then use your portfolio to fund discretionary expenses with a dynamic withdrawal strategy. This way, if the market crashes, you cut discretionary spending, but your essentials are covered. You don't risk running out of money for necessities. Additionally, you can front-load discretionary spending. Spend more on travel and experiences in your 60s and early 70s when you're healthy. Then reduce discretionary spending in your late 70s and 80s when you're less active. This matches the natural spending curve of retirement and allows you to enjoy your money when it matters most. Strategy number 3, create a bond ladder or CD ladder for near-term spending. One of the biggest risks in retirement is being forced to sell stocks during a market crash to fund your spending. You're locking in losses. A better approach is to create a bond ladder or CD ladder that covers 3 to 5 years of essential expenses. You hold individual bonds or CDs that mature each year, providing cash for that year's expenses. This way, during a market downturn, you're not selling stocks. You're living off maturing bonds and CDs while waiting for the market to recover. For example, if you need $50,000 per year in essential expenses not covered by Social Security, you'd set aside $250,000 in a 5-year ladder. Year 1, you have $50,000 in a CD maturing this year. Year 2, $50,000 maturing next year, and so on. Each year, as a bond or CD matures, you replace it with a new 5-year bond using proceeds from your stock portfolio, but only if the market is up. If the market is down, you don't replenish the ladder. You let it run down to 3 or 2 years while waiting for recovery. This approach gives you sequence of returns protection because you're not forced to sell stocks at the worst possible time. Strategy number 4, delay Social Security to maximize guaranteed income. This is one of the most underutilized strategies. Most people claim Social Security at 62, or their full retirement age around 67. But every year you delay claiming past your full retirement age, your benefit increases by 8%. If your full retirement age benefit is $24,000 per year, waiting until 70 increases it to $31,680 per year. That's an extra $7,680 per year, guaranteed, inflation adjusted, for life. Here's the move. If you retire before 70, use your portfolio to cover expenses from retirement until 70. Then claim Social Security at 70 for the maximum benefit. Yes, you're drawing down your portfolio more in those early years, but you're buying a significantly higher guaranteed income for the rest of your life. This is essentially buying the best annuity available. An 8% annual increase, guaranteed, is better than any annuity you can purchase on the open market. Studies show that for most people, delaying Social Security to 70 results in higher lifetime wealth and lower portfolio failure rates. Strategy number 5, plan for variable spending across retirement phases. Instead of assuming constant inflation-adjusted spending, plan for the reality of retirement spending. Higher spending in your 60s and early 70s when you're active and healthy. Lower spending in your mid to late 70s and early 80s when you're less active, then potentially higher spending again in your late 80s and 90s for healthcare and long-term care. Build your withdrawal strategy around this curve. In your early retirement years, you might withdraw 5% for travel and experiences. In your middle years, you drop to 3% because you're spending less. In your later years, you increase again for healthcare, but ideally, you've purchased long-term care insurance or set aside specific funds for this phase. This variable approach is more realistic and allows you to enjoy your money when it has the most value to your quality of life. Now let me put this all together with a real example because I want you to see how this works. Meet Linda. She's 65, just retired with $1 million saved. Her Social Security at full retirement age would be $24,000 per year. Her essential expenses are $45,000 per year. Her discretionary expenses, travel and hobbies, are $20,000 per year. Total desired spending, $65,000 per year. The 4% rule approach. She withdraws $40,000 from her portfolio in year 1, plus $24,000 from Social Security, totaling $64,000, close enough to her $65,000 goal. She adjusts for inflation each year. If she retires in a bad sequence of returns, she has about a 15 to 20% chance of running out of money before she dies. Not great odds. The dynamic approach. She delays Social Security until 70, increasing her benefit to $31,680 per year. From 65 to 70, she lives off her portfolio, withdrawing about $65,000 per year. This draws her portfolio down to about $725,000 by age 70 after market growth and withdrawals. At 70, she starts Social Security at $31,680. She now only needs $33,320 from her portfolio to hit her $65,000 spending goal. That's a 4.6% withdrawal rate from her remaining portfolio. She sets up a Guardrails strategy with a target of 4.5% and Guardrails at 3.5% and 5.5%. She also creates a 3-year bond ladder covering $100,000 of essential expenses, so she's never forced to sell stocks in a downturn. In good market years, when her withdrawal rate drops below 3.5%, she increases discretionary spending and enjoys extra travel. In bad market years, when her rate goes above 5.5%, she cuts discretionary spending by 20%, reducing travel but maintaining essentials. This approach reduces her failure rate to below 5% and gives her flexibility to enjoy more in good years while staying safe in bad years. Let's talk numbers over a 30-year retirement. The 4% rule approach, assuming average returns and bad sequence, leaves Linda broke or dangerously close to broke by age 90. The dynamic approach, even with bad sequence of returns, leaves Linda with over $300,000 remaining at age 95, while allowing her to spend more in good years. The difference is flexibility, responsiveness to market conditions, and realistic planning. So here's what you need to do if you're planning for retirement or already retired. First, stop using the 4% rule as your only guide. It's broken. It was always questionable, and in today's environment, it's dangerous. Second, calculate your safe withdrawal rate based on current conditions. If you're retiring soon or recently retired, use 3 to 3.5% as your baseline, not 4%. If you're retiring early or expect a long retirement, use 2.8 to 3%. Yes, this means you need to save more than you thought. That's reality. Better to know now than run out of money at 85. Third, implement a dynamic withdrawal strategy. Don't lock yourself into a fixed withdrawal amount. Use guardrails, percentage of portfolio, or another flexible method that adjusts to market conditions. Fourth, maximize guaranteed income. Delay Social Security to 70 if possible. Consider annuitizing a portion of your portfolio to cover essential expenses. The more expenses you cover with guaranteed income, the less pressure on your portfolio. Fifth, separate essential and discretionary spending. Know your baseline survival expenses and cover those with guaranteed sources. Use your portfolio for discretionary spending that you can cut in bad years. Sixth, build liquidity buffers. Bond ladders, CD ladders, cash reserves, something that covers 2 to 5 years of expenses, so you're never forced to sell stocks at the bottom. Seventh, plan for variable spending. Front-load experiences when you're healthy. Reduce spending in mid-retirement. Budget for health care and potential long-term care in late retirement. And eighth, stress test your plan. Don't just assume average returns. Model what happens if you retire right before a crash. Model what happens if you live to 100. Model what happens if healthcare costs spike. Your plan should work in bad scenarios, not just average ones. I want to leave you with one final thought, because I think it reframes everything. The 4% rule isn't just broken mathematically, it's broken philosophically. It treats retirement as a static, predictable event, where you can set a withdrawal rate at 65 and forget about it. But retirement isn't static. The market changes, your health changes, your spending needs change, inflation changes, interest rates change. A good retirement plan adapts to all of this. It's dynamic, flexible, and responsive. The families who thrive in retirement aren't the ones who blindly followed the 4% rule. They're the ones who built flexible plans, maintained multiple income sources, separated essential and discretionary spending, and adjusted their lifestyle based on market conditions. They didn't assume everything would work out. They planned for volatility and built systems to handle it. You can do this too, but you have to let go of the 4% rule. It's a relic of a different era with different market conditions and different life expectancies. It doesn't apply to your retirement. The retirement planning industry wants you to believe it's simple. Save 25 times your expenses, withdraw 4%, you're good. It's not that simple. It never was. Retirement is complicated, variable, and risky. But with the right strategies, dynamic withdrawals, maximized guaranteed income, flexible spending, liquidity buffers, you can navigate that complexity successfully. You can retire with confidence. You can make your money last. You just can't do it by following a broken 30-year-old rule that was questionable even when it was created. If this video changed how you think about retirement planning, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe to the Penny Plan for more content that challenges conventional financial wisdom. The 4% rule is broken, but now you know what actually works. The question is, are you going to keep following the broken rule, or are you going to build a plan that actually protects your future?